Welcome to the pre-show, everyone. Welcome. We're getting ready for the 220-1001 A plus study group. I don't even have my headphones in yet. We're trying to get things together. We're trying to get it all done. I just finished the podcast intro, so that can go away. Thank you, podcast intro. We are recording, aren't we? Yes, we are. Thank you, recorder, with the recording. We've got Socrative here. We can get rid of this. We've got a lot going on my screens here. I don't think I have anything ready to go. We'll move this over here. There's lots of stuff going on. Hello, chat room. Thanks for being here. I've got, we'll start live, by the way, for those watching on the replay in about 9 minutes or so. I don't have the exact time, 8.5. 8.5 minutes. So I'll get everything up and running on my side that needs to be here. Let's get the course notes ready. Let's get things going. Which one do I have here? We'll do that one. And we need to view it as 2 pages because that's really big. There we go. See how much better that is? Let's get a headphone in. I don't even know if you're hearing me. My wires are a little bit tangled. I shot A plus video yesterday. I shot the 220-1002 video yesterday. And boy, it was involved getting that all started, but it all worked great. Let's do a camera check here real quick. I need to go around the horn once I get headphones in. The notifications will be going out on social media in about 3 minutes. We should see quite a few people showing up in the chat room. So make sure I can see everybody who's joining live. That can. Thank you for being on the live stream. Now I can hear myself. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm looking at my meters. I think they're okay. I did some audio adjustments yesterday. So hopefully this is sounding okay. This is one of those challenges you always run into. Did you turn it off right? Is everything working okay? So that's the real challenge. Let's do a camera check though real quick. Hey, the camera's working. Who said it wouldn't be working? Let's see if I can get my keynote working on the screen in front of me. There's camera 2, camera 3. Actually, I'd like camera 3 with me in it. There. That's camera 3 with me in it. And camera 4 needs to show the actual presentation. So camera 4 with me in it is there. There's more buttons these days. And there's me with me in it. That's not what I wanted at all. This is what I wanted. See, that's better. See, more stuff to push. More buttons. Hello, San Jose. Welcome. I mentioned 1002. Does that mean the full 1002 videos will be up and running soon? Well, Newell, let's hope. I'm shooting 1002 videos right now. The way this works is I shoot the videos, I get them recorded, I edit, and I post as quickly as I can. So you'll start to see 1002 videos be released probably this week. You'll see a few posted. This is not going to be a large number all of a sudden that will be posted, but you'll see a few of them will be posted. So there will be something there to work through. How long that will take, who knows? There is no particular formal production schedule, but I'm trying to be very aggressive with the recording. The recording is a relatively straightforward process, but it's just time consuming, not only for actual sitting down and shooting the video, because I have to sit in this room and shoot a video to you and then edit that video, but it's just time consuming. So the first video, for instance, of the 1002 series, it took me about 1 hour and 10 minutes to shoot one video. And that video is probably going to be about 20 minutes long. So it ends up taking 3 times as long as it should, or not as long as it should. It takes exactly as long as it should. It takes about 3 times as long as what you end up seeing, because I will do part of a explanation, or I won't like it. I'll restart it. I'll say it a different way. I'll do it 2 or 3 times just so I like it. New Jersey is here. Kentucky is here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm glad it's all working. I moved a bunch of stuff around. The studio is very different. It looks the same as when you probably saw it last, if you've ever been here before. It looks very similar, but everything is. I changed the video switcher out. So this control panel that's to my left is all brand new. The old video system completely gone. All of the cameras are 4K, although what you're seeing is 1080p. So you're not seeing 4K on YouTube. Although the 1002 videos, I will probably post as 4K videos onto YouTube. Not that that will make much of a difference. It's, I'm the little talking head in the corner. But if you're watching on a 4K television, it should look a lot sharper. So that's one of those things. You're from Michigan. Welcome. Your school offers free CompTIA A+ and associate's degree. There are people in the chat room right now that would kill to get a free A+ program and associate's degree. So yes. The Glaswegians are here from Scotland. Welcome, Alan. Thank you for being here. I got to get back to Scotland. I was watching some YouTube videos. I spent 2 weeks in Edinburgh, years ago. It was for business, but it was over a 2-week period. And that was awesome. So I got to get back to Scotland. Got to take the Mrs. Professor Messer and get up there. How are we doing on time? I suppose I should pay attention to the clock. We got about 3 minutes. I think everything is working. There's more buttons to press now, though. It's not quite as easy as it was before, so bear with me today. If I cut to a camera view and that camera view looks a little bit weird, that's why, because it is weird. Do I have things on the screen the way I want them to be? Let's see. There's camera 3. Let's see if it takes the way I want it. Yeah, that looks okay. So I can see that. That's good. Atlanta. Hey, Atlanta. I got to get to Atlanta again, too. It's been a while since I've been up there. I used to go every week, and now I don't go at all. I don't have lower thirds also on this week or today. I'll probably have them on. Look, I'm here twice. Nobody wants that. Why am I here twice? Why am I doing that to myself? What buttons do I push to get rid of me? But I want to get the lower third going. So during the last part of this, which is the second half of this, where we have the call-in, you'll have to refer to the call-in numbers that are on the live page. And I'll, of course, give them out so that we can get them there. Let's see. Oh, you're taking the Cert Master. I guess the Cert Master CE for your A+ recertification. Great. That's outstanding. There's Augusta. Welcome. George is checking in. Let's, we're almost ready to get going. I think, am I a ThinkPad owner? I am not a ThinkPad owner. I do not have a ThinkPad. Do not. Back in the days when those came out, this is when they were first released, when they were an IBM product. Boy, they were the thing. The ThinkPad was a heck of a laptop. Really built like a brick, having those there. It's now all Lenovo, I think, isn't it? Welcome, Cincinnati. Welcome, Cary, North Carolina. Definitely. We've got all the cameras seem to be set up and running. You can see there's the camera view that I'm referring to. That's my control panel there. And I've got a duplicate of that that's really in front of me. So that's what we're doing. I switched all my video switching around for those of you just joining us. So we're going to see how well this works today. I've been using it for the new series of videos for the 220-1002. It's been working great. So it's really worked out okay. We've got a lot going on there. We've got, it's top of the hour. Why don't we just do this and let's see what happens? How bad can it possibly be, everyone? So let's go live. We're recording here. We're recording there. Streaming's working. You're here. I think we're ready to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2019 Professor Messer 220-1001 A+ study group. Thank you for being here. My name is James Messer. I'll be your host for this next hour of 220-1001 A+ Q&A. For those of you that haven't joined us before, we do 2 A+ study groups, one for the 220-1001 exam, which they sometimes refer to as Core 1, and one for the 220-1002 exam. That will be in 2 days from now on Thursday. So you're welcome to come back and check out Thursday's study group as well. There is plenty of Q&A that we're going to go through today. I will make sure that we go through all of that as we get things going. I want to first remind you that we've got this study group here. We'll be doing in the second hour of this is a call-in. So I just open up the phone lines. There's no formal questions or anything that you need to ask. There's just open phone lines. You're welcome to ask really anything. Well, almost anything. In that second hour, I'll have that phone line up, so you'll have it there. I was mentioning earlier I have a new video switching system here, so I don't have a lower third for the phone line, but I'll make sure it's right there on the screen, 855-785-RJ45, which is not currently available. You have to call in the second hour. In this first hour, you're going to be answering questions live. And the way that you're going to do that, I'll show you in a moment. It's amazing. It's the internet. It's everybody's connected. It's a fantastic way to do this. There are also, by the way, my 220-1001 course is complete. Every minute of every video of every CompTIA exam topic is now listed on my website in the 220-1001 video index. So for those of you that for months have been asking, when are the videos going to be done for the 220-1001? They're done. I'm finished. They are complete, and they are out there. You can find those on my website. Some people like to have a downloadable version. There is a downloadable version available on my website. I'll give you a link to all of that later on. You can find the link on the main page of the website as well. This is also a live study group that will give you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU, but you have to be listening in at some point because I will give you instructions on how to do that. They're very specific instructions, and you have to follow those instructions or you don't get the CEU. So that's the secret, is you have to listen in to know when that's going to happen. And for A+, you have to earn 4 CEUs, or you can earn up to 4 CEUs in a 3-year period that are webinar CEUs. So I think you need 20 to renew your A+. I can give you 4 of those. You can't watch 20 of my study groups to renew your A+. Sorry about that. That's just the way it goes. We have been mentioning earlier that we're going to focus on the 220-1001 exam, but the 900 series exams are still available for you to take over, let's see, until July 31st. There's the date. Retires on July 31st. Now, these have been out since December the 15th of 2015. So if you want to go back and look at previous study groups for the last 3 years, you can go back to earlier study groups and go through Q&A if you'd like to do that. Today, we're going to focus all on the 220-1001. And there is some overlap between the two, but as I always say, you should always study for materials that match the version of the exam that you're going to take. You should always study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're going to take. So if you're going to take the 220-1001, you're in the right place to learn everything that you need to know. And the last day to take those 900 series exams, July 31st. So now you have to make a decision. If you've been studying for the 900 series and you think you can get it done by July 31st, keep going and make sure you can get both of those exams done by that date. But if this is a situation where you may not be able to wait that long, you may think, there's no way I'm going to get this done by July 31st. This may be a good time to switch over to the 1000 series. There's 80% of the exam is similar to the 900 series. So that's one of those things that you'll need to know about. The 1001 and 1002 exams were just released in January. So these are brand new exams. In fact, the books for these exams are slow to come out. It usually takes a couple of months, 3 or 4 months after the exam is released, and you're starting to see more books arrive this month. So finally, you'll be able to get some 1001 and 1002 books. Now, for deciding which one to take, doesn't matter. You get exactly the same A+ certification regardless of which exams you take. There's just no difference between the two. If you take the 900 series exams, you get the A+. If you take the 1000 series exams, you get the A+. It's the same certification. There's no difference. In fact, if you have your A+ and you've had it for 5-6 years, you've not taken a newer exam. You've just renewed it every year. So that gives you an idea of how the exam gets you the cert, and then you never take the exams again. If you're lucky, if you're smart, I guess. You never take those again. As I mentioned, not much has changed between the exams. There is, on the 1001, 21% of the topics are new. On the 1002, 23% of the topics are new. So if you have to switch over, you're okay. You're not losing anything, not losing a lot. You studied some things that you don't need to know, but you do need to study 20% of things that are new. So I mention this because if you've been studying 900 series exam content and you go in to take the exam, you could have a big impact to your score because you didn't study the right materials. That's why I'm making that so clear to everyone, is make sure you get the right things in there. We're going to focus on the core one today. So the core one is this first box: mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization, cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So there's plenty there to go through, and we'll go through all of those things today. The 1002, we're due that study group Thursday, 2 days from today, is operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So you'll notice that the scores in here, it's 90 minutes long, you get a maximum of 90 question. There's a scale between 100 and 900, an odd scale it is, and you have to make a 675. So it's an odd number. Just do the best you can. If you make 675 points, you pass the exam. On the 1002, it's a 700. So it's exactly the same as the previous version. So that's the important part to keep in mind. Now, there's, of course, as I mentioned, my 1000 course is available for professormesser.com/download 1001 if you want an offline version. This is exactly the same version that's available online. The 1080p HD video, the MP3 audio, my course notes PDF comes with this. It's all included in the same package. So this is just something that if you can't watch it online, you don't want to watch it online, you would like an offline version, you would like an MP3 version, this is something bundled together for you. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/download 1001. There's also this study group available in podcast form. So if you'd like to have this podcast available tomorrow, you'd like to listen into the study group, just automatically have it downloaded to your podcasting program. That's how you do it. Go to professormesser.com/podcast. You'll find podcasts there for the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups that I do. And lastly, we have this. I want to make you aware that if you go back to YouTube tomorrow or the next day or so, you will see that there is a full and complete index of everything that we do during the study group. And you just click on the timestamp, and it'll take you right to that question or right to that after show question. So you can find anything you're looking for. My marketing manager, Lori, goes through and watches this in the following day or later on in the day, and she documents this entire thing. She does an amazing job with this. So if you're going back and wanting to find what were they talking about last month about that question, you click. You can find it very, very, very quickly. Just another thing that might help you as you're going through and watching these. There is also a live Q&A that we're going to do right now. So here's how you do it. Make a note. For those of you watching, by the way, on YouTube, there is a live chat available. You go to professormesser.com/live. I'm talking to people in the chat in the pre-show. I'm watching your comments go by as we're doing this. So if you have questions while we're doing this Q&A, that's where you want to put it, is in the chat. What you want to do is pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. That will open up and show you a screen right now that has a question on it. So you'll know exactly where to go to see what's going on. This is the question that comes up is one from last month. So you'll know you're able to get in and see what's going on. We call that our study group rewind. We'll do that in a moment. You also have an app that you can download from your favorite app store, whether it's on the Apple or Google side, and it is called the Socrative Student App. I think I enunciated that correctly. Socrative Student App. Make sure you have a look at that. It's Socrates, as they say. And it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. And if you do all of that, you will get this month's study group rewind question that asks, when a SIM is moved from one mobile device to another, all incoming calls will follow the SIM. Which of the following allows this capability? So which of the following would allow this capability? Your options are IMEI, VPN, PRL, IMSI, or PRI. You've got 5 options there to make that happen. So you've got all those to go through. And as you can see, I can see live as you're answering these, you'll see the numbers start to change. And as you go through and look at this, This is something that can really help you try to figure out which one of these is going to be the right answer. Try to do a 50-50. Try to get rid of things you know it's not going to be. This is a question from last month, just to see if you can get in and answer the questions that are on here. I think people are starting to pile on. They saw which one happens to be the number one answer. People are starting to move over to that one. But what is it really? What is the answer for all these incoming calls and moving the SIM around? And how does this work anyway with this? Well, there's two things that you have to worry about when it comes to understanding how to track a phone and how to track a user who is subscribed to a particular service. So one of the ways to do that is with an IMEI. This is the International Mobile Station Equipment Identity. That identifies the physical device. So that's the way that your mobile provider knows what physical device you happen to be using. To be able to move your SIM, though, it is the IMSI, the International Mobile Subscriber Identity, that is able to do that. So that's how you would go through and figure out where the user happens to be, is that IMSI that follows the SIM if it's provisioned in your SIM card. Many providers allow you to do that so that if you move from one place to another or you use multiple phones, you go to a different country, you're able to move your SIM to the proper phone that will work in that particular country. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what that is. So it's IMSI. And so those of you that did answer D, IMSI, 59% of you got that one right. We talked about the IMEI and why that's not the case. So those are the things we're going to do as we go through these questions and try to figure out the details of these questions and what they happen to be. We'll go through all of these. And I've got questions for you today that we will go through that are all brand new. So let's jump into those. By the way, on your exam, you will find that most of the exam is multiple choice, but you will find the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. This throws a lot of people. They had no idea when they sat down for this exam that they'd be getting these involved questions in some cases. Some of them are fill in the blank. Some of them put you at a command prompt and ask you to complete a particular process. Some of them are drag and drop questions. Some of them ask you to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You have to be ready for those types of questions. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. So they are anything but multiple choice. Now, the bulk of your exam is going to be multiple choice, but it's that first section of questions that are performance-based questions. So what I like to do in my study group is the first question we ask is a performance-based question. So we're going to go through and ask that performance-based question right now. This one happens to be a fill-in-the-blank. Some of you have sent me notes saying, make them a little harder. So we'll see if I made it too hard for you today. But this is a very good fill-in-the-blank 220,001 question that we're going to do. I'm going to give you kind of a fill-in-the-blank on your screen, and you can just type in what these happen to be for each one of these. So let's have a look at the question. Here it is. And for those of you listening on the podcast, I'm sorry, this is a visual question that has an image and looks like the image of a back of a computer, back of a motherboard with 7 different interfaces on it. And I'm asking you to name the interface. This is it. So you see numbers 1 through 7, and you can see that this is pointing to these different, pointing to interface number 1, interface number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6 is up here, and then number 7. Notice number 6 is at the top right there. Number 7 is this last one here. So what I'm looking for, and I will accept whether you're telling me the actual name of the interface or what the interface is actually used for. So don't answer in the chat room. Don't give me any hints in the chat room. We want to do this as if you're sitting in the room. Numbers 1 is what is number 1. And you can give me, as I mentioned, the interface type or the name of how you use it. So each one of these interfaces kind of has 2 names to it. There's the official interface name, and I will give you both of these in the answers, and there's a name that gives you that. So name those 7 interfaces that are on here. I see a number of you trying to figure these out. You're trying to Google them in, and I'm getting some responses coming in. This one is a fill in the blank. I'm not giving you matching. I'm not giving you any options. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. So some of you are already sending these in. I'm looking through the answers. You guys are doing really good with these. Some of you are answering what the interface is, what it provides. Some of you are answering the official name of the interface, which is fine. Either one of those is good. So if you want to answer this question right here at the bottom, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you answer that particular question. And now if you're watching this on the replay, that won't be available. This is something that you're only able to do if you're live. So that's where you go to see it if you are here live. If you don't know when the next live event's going to be, you can always check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Again, remember, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room, none of that. We're going to pretend we're doing this live and in person. We're sitting down for the exam, and I think this is a very good example of the type of question you might get as a performance-based question. As many of you know, my strategy for performance-based questions is that you skip them. You come back to them. You don't skip them completely, but you jump over them at the beginning, and you go right to all of the multiple choice questions, because the CompTIA exam allows you to jump around to any question at any time. You could start on the last question of the exam and work your way backwards if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. So what I tend to do is jump over the performance-based questions. I'll look at them. I'll just click next to go through, or I'll flag them. And then I get to the multiple choice and go through the multiple choice. The idea here is that the multiple choice helps remind me of things that I've forgotten. It helps jog my memory about things that I may have forgotten when I sat down for the exam, because I forget a lot when I step into the exam room. That instant, I am now stupid when I sit down for the exam. So going through the multiple choice gets my mind back in that mode. And then at the end of the multiple choice, I circle back to the performance-based questions, and now I can remember a lot of the terminology that I could not remember when I sat down at the very beginning of the exam, because of all of the things we have to worry with. So there is the concern. Now in the chat room, some folks are asking, are there more points for the performance-based questions than any of the multiple choice? We don't know. We have no idea how CompTIA scores their exams. We have no idea how they plan to, if they give any type of scoring. They just don't provide that. They don't tell us if it's if they give you partial credit or not. They have said in the past that it's rare. They've changed that to be, well, sometimes we give partial credit, but they say not always. So on a question like this, I would hope they would give you partial credit for something like that. We just don't know. Let's see how you did with this. We've got a number of you that have answered this one already. This is a good one, isn't it? I like some of the answers that are coming in, by the way. So you folks are really thinking about what these are used for and how this works. Let's step through each one of these and let's see how you did. So let's start with number one. That funny little, what they call a mini DIN connection is right there as number one. And that is commonly used for keyboard and mouse. So if you answered mini DIN, if you answered PS2, I'll accept that. It's commonly called a PS2 connection because those were the keyboard and mouse interfaces first introduced on the IBM PS2 line of computers. And so because it was so unique at the time, well, that's the PS2 connection for the keyboard and mouse. And we just called it PS2, which is the name of a computer, not the name of an interface, but the name stuck. And that's how it works in computers, by the way. Sometimes the name we refer to is not what it actually is. And PS2 is certainly acceptable for that. Everybody recognizes as that. Let's look at number two. The second interface is that one right there. That is what people call a DB9. Technically, it's a DE9. You will see it referred to in both ways, but more commonly, you'll see it referred to as a DB9. And that's a serial connection. So you'll see it being used for serial connectivity if you're plugging in any device that uses serial. If you're plugging into a serial management interface on a firewall, on a switch, on a router, you would use the serial interface sometimes to do that. There are options that allow you to take a USB connection and convert it to serial, and you'll see a lot of those options available for connecting to devices like that. We also have number three. What is number three? That is a DB25 connection, truly a DB25 connection. And that is commonly used for parallel or printer connections, especially legacy printers that use that parallel connectivity. That's that big. You can see why we don't use that connector anymore. It's so big. It takes up a lot of room on the motherboard. It's now easier just to plug in USB for your printer and for pretty much everything else. So things like the PS2 connections, the serial connection, and that DB25 connection have now been converted or translated over into USB. You can see the value absolutely there. Let's also go number 4. Some questions that come in the chat room. We'll address those when we get through all 7 of these. Number 4 is a DB15, technically a DE15. E is the second letter, by the way. It stands for D subminiature and then a letter that describes the size of that D subminiature connection. And the DB is the larger size. The DE is the smaller size. So you may see that sometimes referred to as a DE15. And it's a VGA connection. It's a video connection. So there's this. Yeah, for those in the chat room, this makes a very good 901 question as well. This is a good 901 and 1001 question. You're absolutely right. Let's go to number 5. 5 is a USB connection. I think we all got that one right. Technically a USB type A connection. And because it's USB, it's available pretty much for anything that uses USB. Number 6 is this connection at the top. That's an RJ45 connection, commonly used for Ethernet. That's really the only thing that particular connection can be. And lastly, number 7 is a TRS, tip ring sleeve connector. It's commonly used for analog audio, for speaker, for microphone, and for other types of audio connectivity. So there are those 7 interfaces. This is a good thing to run through. Go to YouTube, not go to YouTube, go to the Google. Go to the Google image search and search around for motherboards and try to recognize what all of these interfaces are on the back of a motherboard. Look at random motherboards and have things pop up. You will see interfaces you've not seen before. And then you want to go to the manual for that particular motherboard model and find out what is that interface. That's a great way to do this. And do that this piece of it and have these here. It's a nice way to try some different ideas about where these things happen to be. So those are your 7 fill in the blanks. I think that was a pretty good performance-based question for those of you that are trying to figure out what should I expect. And if you go back to any of my study groups, the very first question we always do is a performance-based question. Maybe that can help you study before you sit down for your exam. So pretty good idea to go through those if you have any questions about performance-based questions. Let's do, for those in the chat room, yes, if you're asking if these study groups are available on the YouTube, they're available immediately afterwards. So we're streaming to YouTube. As soon as I stop the stream, it processes the video. Sometimes that takes 30 minutes or more, depends on what's going on at YouTube. And then it makes those available on YouTube automatically. So I don't even have to do anything. It'll just be available to you immediately afterwards or shortly after we are done with the study group today. And that's always that way for every study group, just so you know. Let's shift gears now. Let's move away from performance-based questions. Let's do multiple choice questions. I think that's where we should focus our efforts for the rest of the study group. And I have a multiple choice question. Remember, no answering in the chat room on these multiple choice questions. This first multiple choice of the day asks, a laptop display is showing a black screen and nothing is shown on the screen during the startup process or when Windows is loaded. Which of these would be the best way to determine if the backlight is the issue? And I have 5 options for you. You could boot from the Windows installation media. You could change the video output selection in the BIOS. You could point a flashlight at the screen. You could disable video hardware acceleration, or you can install updated video drivers. Those are your 5 options. And this is a pretty common problem you'll run into, not just with laptop screens. So a laptop display is showing a black screen and nothing is shown on the screen during the startup process or when Windows is loaded. Which of these would be the best way to determine if the backlight is the issue? Is it boot from the Windows installation media? Is it change the video output selection in the BIOS? Is it point a flashlight at the screen? Is it disable video hardware acceleration? Or is it install updated video drivers? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA right here at the bottom. That's where you want to go and answer that particular question. Be able to figure out which one of those it happens to be. I'm going to take a sneak peek because a number of you are already answering this one. And if you've watched my 221,001 videos, you probably do know the answer to this one because I mention it specifically in those videos. Good place to go to figure out where that happens to be. It's nice to have all those 1001 videos done and behind me at this point, and I can actually tell you, yeah, go watch that video. I've updated it. I've put more information in it, and it's more specific to some of the things in the exam objectives that you'll want over the 900 series. So it's nice to have those there. A lot of you have already answered this one. I'm going to wait a couple of seconds or so for some extra answers to come in, as some of you are trying to figure out which one of these really would be the best way to figure out if the backlight is the issue. My goal with these questions, by the way, is to get about 50% of you answering this question and getting it right. I don't want to make them too easy, but I don't want to make them too hard. So that's the good minimum I'm shooting for. Let's see how we did with this one. 51% of you said C. If that's the right answer, then I was successful. Well, I'll have to find out if that's really the right answer, because 34% of you, well over a third or slightly over a third, said to change the video output selection in the BIOS. You've got 7% that said install updated video drivers, 6% said boot from the Windows installation media, and 3% said to disable video hardware acceleration. So which one of these would be the best way to determine if the backlight was the issue? This was a very specific question that said, forget what it could possibly be. I want to know if it's the backlight. How could I tell if it's a backlight issue? And that's where you want to focus on. So the real answer with this one, there's not two correct answers here, and I'm going to explain to you why in just a moment, why that's not the case. We want to know if the backlight is the problem. It's very specific in this case. So for those of you familiar with LCD technology, the LCD doesn't provide any type of lighting. It simply changes colors on an LCD display. For you to be able to see it, there has to be lights behind it. And so in the past, we've used fluorescent lights, really cold cathode fluorescence, to be able to shine a light through the screen so that your eyes can see it. Most modern LCD displays, though, use LED behind the screens for many good reasons to have that there. LED it's so much easier to manage from a power perspective. It lasts longer. There's a lot of advantages to using LED, but you'll still find some older devices, especially laptops, that have that cold cathode fluorescent backlight on these screens. So the challenge, though, is that these fluorescent lights need power that is not available in the DC power of your laptop. It requires AC power. So there are inverters in your LCD display. They're very thin. They're very small. They sit back there that invert the power so that they can get enough AC power to run these fluorescent lights. Now, if your inverter goes bad, the light turns off. But the LCD display otherwise is working just fine. That means you should be able to look very closely at the screen and see if you can see the Windows desktop. You can see Windows loading. There should be a faint display. You just don't have a light that's shining through it. So what a lot of people will do is they'll grab a flashlight and they'll point it at the screen, and effectively they'll be able to see some reflection coming back through, and you can see that that's happening. I recently had an LCD television go bad. The technician came out. The first thing he did was grab his flashlight, pointed it at the screen, and said, "Oh, well, it's not a backlight issue. The whole display is having a problem." We ended up replacing the logic board on that one because it wasn't a backlight issue. That's how you're able to tell that the specific problem was backlight related. And this particular question was saying, I want to know, for this particular problem we're having, is it a backlight issue? Now, these questions, you only have so much text here. There's not a lot of detail associated with them. You can't start assuming things about any of these questions. You can only go with exactly what they give you in these questions. So this is what you really would focus on, is exactly what they give you. So some folks in the chat room are saying, how can you get to the BIOS if the screen is black? Well, I guess you could plug in an external monitor. That might be a way to do it. Although if you don't have an external monitor, it certainly is difficult to get to the BIOS if you can't see anything on the screen. So we had two options here that people were really looking at. Pointing a flashlight at the screen is the most common answer, and indeed C is the correct answer. 49% of you did choose C as the answer we were looking for. So we hit that 50% of what we're looking at. 34% said change the video output selection in the BIOS. if you're changing where the video is going, let's say you plug in an external monitor, which you really don't have to go to the BIOS to change your video output. It's usually a function button that's on the laptop itself. When you plug in that external device, it would show you that at least your video adapter in the laptop is working, or the video subsystem in your adapter is still working. But it doesn't tell you anything about why your LCD isn't working. And our question here asked, why isn't the LCD working? In fact, it asked a more specific question: is the problem you're having with the LCD related to the backlight? Now, if you shined your flashlight at the screen and you still couldn't see anything, there was nothing in the display, you don't see the Windows start up, you don't see anything that's happening in the startup process, there's nothing being displayed to the screen even faintly, we know that our problem is not backlight related. We know it must be something else related to the video subsystem. Maybe the LCD display itself is bad. Maybe the ribbon cable that's used to connect the LCD display to your laptop motherboard has gone bad. Maybe it's become disconnected from the motherboard. There's a lot of other things that could be the problem. This question was very specifically asking you to troubleshoot one of the potential issues. And this is one that you can test very quickly, because all you do is you grab your flashlight and you shine it at the screen. Hey, can I see anything there? That's it, and you're done. That's a very quick check. So that's one of the first things, as I mentioned, when the tech walked into my house, first thing he did was shine the light, go, oh, it's not a backlight issue. We're going to have to order something. That's how it always goes, isn't it? So if you did answer C, point a flashlight at the screen, 50% of you spot on, got that absolutely right. The other option for changing the video output selection in the BIOS would not only be difficult to do, but unnecessary, because your video selection is usually done from the laptop keyboard. You can point it exactly where you would like to go for video output. So that's another option. And by the way, if you do run into this problem and the screen is black, plug in an external monitor to your laptop. The laptops by default will check to see if an external device is connected. And when you power on your laptop, it will use the external device. For that very reason, it helps you troubleshoot all of those. So well done with that one. If you answered C, point a flashlight at the screen, as it seems like that's a very rudimentary troubleshooting task, but indeed, that's exactly what you should do. Very simple and very easy to do to check your backlight. Let's do another question. I've got one for you right here. This question is looks like it says a network administrator networking question. It asks, a network administrator has asked you to configure a workstation for 100/full. What does the full option refer to? Well, what does it refer to? The security level, the QoS bandwidth setting, the wireless encryption, the duplex, or the speed? You've configured a workstation for 100 full. What does the full option refer to? Is that a security level, a QoS bandwidth setting, a wireless encryption, the duplex, or the speed? If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA and answer this. As you probably are aware, that second domain of the 220-1001 exam is all about networking. And thankfully, they changed this in the 900 series as well. This is a good 900 series question as well for those of you following along, as was the last one, by the way. So right, as I mentioned, 20% of this is new. We haven't even hit new stuff yet. By the way, last month's study group was all new questions. So none of that applied to the 900 series. So we're getting a little overlap on this one. You have to do it. 80% of the exam would be overlap, indeed, for the 900 series. So what does that full option refer to? On the 220-1001 exam, the networking piece focuses on what you need to know as somebody administering a workstation. So a lot of people will ask me, do I have to know about IP subnetting? Do I have to know about routing protocols? Do I have to know about static routing? You don't have to know about any of those things. You have to know how to configure networking on a laptop, on a desktop, on a mobile device. That's what it's focusing on for the A+ exam. So don't get too worried about the networking piece. You'll get a little taste of networking as you take your A+ exam. You'll get a bigger taste of networking, hopefully, when you move into the Network Plus and later. Those are good certifications to have. Let's see how we're doing with this one, though. Got a number of you have answered this. How do we do? 73%. I would say that's a vast majority, say duplex. That's what the answer. They say duplex is the correct answer, but 10%, double digits, say it's the QoS bandwidth setting. And then we've got single digits for wireless encryption, speed, and security level. So we need to know about that full connection. As I mentioned earlier, the A+ exam is all about you configuring a desktop, a laptop, a mobile device to connect to the network. And these are settings that you have to know to be able to connect to the network. One of the things when you go through all of these, and I find that you have to know the details about all of these specific pieces. So one of the things that you'll see when you start configuring these network interface cards is they want to know what speed do you want to connect it to. Sometimes it's auto, or sometimes you're specifying a speed like 10, 100, or 1,000, or even 10,000, I guess, even 10 gig for your 10 gig connections. And of course, for duplex, you have really two options. Is it set for half duplex or full duplex? I guess technically three options because usually it's auto. That's how it configures that. Some devices don't do a very good job with the auto configuration, especially at 100 megabit. So sometimes you want to force the configuration by specifying, I want this to run at 100 megabit and I want it to be full duplex. And that way, you know, when you turn this device on and it connects to the network, it will always run at 100 megabit and it will always run at full duplex. And there was never concern that it happened to auto configure itself to something different. So those are the two primary options when you're configuring network hardware that you will want to look at and configure, especially if you're troubleshooting and you're finding one side of the connection is at half duplex, one side is at full duplex. These are the connection types that you want to look at. For wireless, you're configuring a completely different group of things. Do you turn it on or turn it off? What SSID is it plugging into? Sometimes what wireless channel do you want to force it to use? Is there a particular WPA2 shared password, or are we configuring it for 802.1x? All of that is handled on the wireless side. Wasn't part of this question, but there are wireless options, of course, that you need to consider when you're configuring the network interface card. So in this case, most of you did a pretty good job with this one. It is indeed answer D, duplex. That is the correct answer. 74% of you got that one absolutely right. It is not a security level. There's no security level associated with an Ethernet adapter, so you don't have that issue associated with this. QoS bandwidth settings are not something that uses the speed of the link or full or half duplex type connectivity. QoS bandwidth settings are very different. There's a different scale that you would use. I talk about those in my QoS section of the videos. Wireless encryption we just already talked about, and speed is that first number, is the 100. So that's 100 megabits per second. If somebody says we're plugging into a legacy device that needs to be set to 100 megabits, you would set, so it would usually be 10, 100, 1,000, or 10 gig for those connections. So well done. Most of you did choose duplex. You knew that's exactly what it is, and indeed that is the correct answer. Now, for those of you that have been sort of following along with these videos as we've been doing them, I not only create all of these videos for you to watch online. You can watch every minute of every video absolutely free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's no restrictions on this. You just connect to YouTube, watch them, or go to my website and watch them. Very simple to be able to do that. I also have taken all of the content from all of my videos and put them into one consolidated PDF file. These are my 221,001 and 221,002 A+ course notes. Everything that we've talked about today and everything from every video is listed in these course notes. You could, of course, make your own notes. Take your own notes as you're going through the video. I recommend that you do that. Not all of you have time to read through every video, and sometimes you like to have all of the graphics and all of the information that's on the screen, all of the displays. You'd like all of those to be there as well, and that's why I've created these course notes. So everything is there. Not only it's fully indexed, but you have everything from every video as we're going through it. All of the images, all of the graphics that are displaying information about the networking, they're all in here in these course notes. And of course, every penny from every single one of these course notes goes back to keeping all of this running. So all of this craziness that we've got going on in this room is all here and available for you to watch, or to be able to read through in these course notes after you watch the videos. So something that you can go through and have kind of a summary before you walk into the exam. This doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace hands-on. It doesn't replace Q&A, but hopefully it becomes a very good use of your time to be able to summarize this. It's a PDF to be able to have this information here, so you can download them immediately. There's also a non-PDF version that is available. I've got this here. There it is, the non-PDF version. This is the same information, but it's in a printed form. So there's the same pages we were just looking at in a printed form in a book. This is what they call a perfect bound. It's like a book that you would find in any particular bookstore. It's high quality color output, so you're getting a nice high quality from that. And it's one that you have the option, if you buy this, I will send it to you. I'll ship this to you. And if you get it, I'll give you the PDF version for free. So you can buy the printed version and download the PDF today, and then just wait. I'll send this to you in the mail and have the details of that all available to you in those course notes. Thanks for your support of the course notes. We really could not keep this going without all of the support you give to the products and the videos. It's very much appreciated. We would not be able to do this without you, for sure. Thank you again. Let's get another question in. We got plenty of time. We've got some time to get a couple more questions in. Here's a question that asks, which of these RAID types is the most efficient with disk space while also providing data redundancy? Which of these RAID types is the most efficient with disk space while also providing data redundancy? The possible answers are RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 1 plus 0. So you've got 4 options to choose from. Those 4 RAID types, you have to understand, of those 4, which is the most efficient with disk space while also providing data redundancy. So that should narrow your focus down quite a bit. If you think you don't know what the answer is, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can choose the answer. Again, no answering in the chat room, please, to have all of those there. These RAID types are things you do have to know about. Oh, for those of you asking about where to get these course notes, there are links on the professormesser.com/live page. There are links on the main page of professormesser.com. There's also links on the pull-down menu, and I think there's even links from the video index page. The course notes, I try to make them available so you can see exactly where to get them. It is something that I spend a lot of time to be able to get those course notes available. And I think, what was the link I put on here? It was professormesser.link/1000 notes. That'll get you there as well. So you got a couple of places to go. Hopefully you remember some of your RAID information. That's an important thing to know on the exam. It's important on the A+ exam. It shows up again on other CompTIA exams as well. So learning RAID now will help you. It will also help you if you're actually planning to implement RAID on a laptop, on a desktop, on a server. You might have a NAS or a SAN that you're running. You'll probably have RAID running on that as well. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of these is the most efficient with disk space while also providing data redundancy? And we've got that 50% again, but is that the right answer? What we're going through. 50% of you have said RAID 5. That RAID 5 is the most efficient with disk space while also providing data redundancy, but 27% said no, it's RAID 1 plus 0. 17% said it's RAID 1, and 5% said it's RAID 0. So we've got some options there to be able to figure out which one of those it happens to be. Do we go with the 50% with RAID 5? Is that what we should think about when we're thinking about efficiency with disk space? Yes, absolutely we should. I've got my head in the way. You can't even see what I've got written on the screen for this one. But that is showing that you've got file blocks are striped. That's what it says up there, along with the parity block. So you need at least 3 disks to be able to use RAID 5. But one of the benefits here is that this is a very efficient use of disk space because you are using all of the drive except for one parity drive. So you don't have to duplicate data. So for these 4 disks, for example, if this was RAID 1, you would need both of these to be duplicated. So you'd be using 2 disks for data and 2 disks for redundancy. With RAID 5, much easier to have that there. So you've got effectively 3 disks being used for data and 1 for a parity drive, which gives you redundancy to have that there. So hopefully that will be something that does help you as you're trying to figure out which one of these is going to work. The redundancy, by the way, is pretty impressive. If you lose a drive, it recalculates the missing data based on the parity. So that's the real benefit of running with RAID 5 is you still get redundancy. If you lose a drive, all of your data is still available. You obviously don't want to run like that for very long because you do want to have that redundancy built into that. It's time to do a backup pretty quick, but that is the most, that is the RAID option that fits this the best. So it gives you not only efficiency with the disk space, but it does provide you with redundancy on that. Now, in the 900 series videos, people are saying that the parity calculations may, it didn't say would, but it may slow down the system. And that's certainly possible because you have to perform that parity calculation. If you lose disk 3, well, if we're pulling block 1A, 2A, and 3A, we don't have to do anything. But if we lose disk 3 and we only have block 1B, 2B, and parity B, we now have to calculate block 3B. So there's calculations that still have to happen when that occurs. Sometimes those calculations are done in hardware, which means you may not even realize that that particular calculation is occurring, or it might be in software, which very could possibly slow down. It very could possibly. How's that for knowing how to handle that? It very could possibly slow down if it's software-based RAID. You just never know exactly what you may run into. So, and it does mean that if you lose that drive, you're still running, you still have access to the data. I have run into situations where there's been a RAID array that is a redundant RAID array configuration. They've lost a drive and they didn't even know it. I walk in and I'm like, why is the red light flashing on the RAID array? And they're thinking, I don't know. I'm working on spreadsheets. And I look and there's a drive that's gone bad. I look back in the logs. It went bad months ago. So, of course, replace that drive and it rebuilds and you're back to full again. But they had no idea that that was a problem. So sometimes you don't even know that it didn't slow down enough to make a difference to them. And that ultimately is really the most important part for these different types of things. Let's get another question in. Oh, by the way, those of you that answered RAID 5, answer C, that is the right one. 52% of you got that one. Absolutely correct. RAID 0 provides no redundancy whatsoever. RAID 1 requires a duplicate drive, a complete duplicate of everything. So if you have 4 drives, you need 4 other drives to maintain the duplicate. Or if you have 2 drives, like our picture, if you have 2 drives with RAID 1, you would need 2 separate drives for the redundant part. Well, that's not very efficient, is it? And for RAID 1 plus 0, we not only have all of the data drives, we have multiple drives for the parity, or really for a redundant connection. So not very efficient with disk space either. It's almost like combining 1 and 0 together. To have those capabilities, RAID 5 is the most efficient with disk space. That is the correct answer. Answer C. Let's do another question. I've got one. For those of you running virtual machines, this is a virtual machine question. And the question asks, a system administrator has created a virtual machine that uses a shared network address. Which of the following would best describe this address? Would it be the IP address of the VM is the same as the host computer? Is it the VM has a private network address? Is it the VM has a unique IP address on the local network? Or is it that the VM has the same IP address as the default gateway? One of those 4 things. So let's go through this question again, see if we can parse it out. A system administrator has created a virtual machine that uses a shared network address. Which of the following would best describe this address? Answer A is that the IP address of the VM is the same as the host computer. Answer B is the VM has a private network address. Answer C is the VM has a unique IP address on the local network. And answer D is the VM has the same IP address as the default gateway. If you think you know the answer, please note answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this one. So some of you may already seen on the, this was on the 900 series as well. So this is a good 900 series question too. And this, there's more of a focus, I guess you could say, on virtual systems and cloud computing on the 1000 series. They certainly promote it that way. I think it's one more video. It's not like there was an extensive amount of content added for cloud computing. There's a little bit added. And the virtualization part is effectively identical to the 900 series exam. And this was certainly on the 900 series too. So you can go through and figure out those details. For those of you running VMs before, you're probably familiar with this. You probably run into this and figuring out those details. In fact, this is a very popular question that comes up when people are installing a virtual machine and they're trying to figure out the networking piece. There's a number of different options available. And I go through each one of those options in my 1000 series videos, my 1001 videos, so you can know what the differences are as you're trying to configure these virtual machine settings on your desktop. Important to know what those are. We'll go through. In fact, I think I have the slide on these that we're going to go through. So you'll know today how to set up your VM for the proper networking once we're done with this. Let's see how we did with all of these and getting the details there. I think we can step through all of that. Let's see how you answered. Here we go. Let's choose the how do we do button. And we're a little torn again, although we do have one that's close to 50%. If answer A was that the IP address of the VM is the same as the host computer, 45% of you chose that one. So we didn't get a majority, but we got pretty close. Answer C was that the VM has a unique IP address in the local network. 28% of you chose that one. And we've got double digits for the others. 14% chose that VM has a private network address, and 13% says the VM has the same IP address as the default gateway. So which one of these does it happen to be? Well, we need to step through what the options are on the networking side for this. So if you've ever used a virtual machine manager like VMware's VMware Workstation, or you've used VirtualBox, on the Mac side, you may have used Parallels or something of that sort. Most of these virtual machine managers allow you to configure how the virtual machine will use the network, which is great. We have lots of flexibility, and it does come in handy because you can change the type of access that's provided to that virtual machine. If it is a shared network address, which is exactly what we were asking this question, the virtual machine shares the exact same IP address as the physical host. Now, how does it do that, though? You can't have multiple devices with the same IP address. Well, what the host machine effectively does is perform a network address translation and sends that information to the logical virtual machine that's on the inside. So there's an address translation that occurs every time that VM needs to talk out to the rest of the world. This is very similar to the network address translation that takes place on your internet router that you have at home. You know, inside your network are a set of IP addresses, and that device performs a NAT so that you can communicate out to the internet. It's exactly the same configuration, except it's now on your computer. Your VM performs a NAT so that it can now communicate out to the rest of your local network. And because that network address translation is there, it's effectively the same IP address as your host IP. If you were to look at traffic on your network, traffic coming from the VM or traffic coming from your host computer, same IP address. And that's why we call it a shared configuration for those. You might also get a bridged network address where the virtual machine itself looks like a device, a separate device on your local network. So just as you plug in your laptop to your local network, a desktop to your local network, your virtual machine is on your local network. So if your network is a 192.168.1. something network, your virtual machine also gets a 192.168.1. It probably gets a DHCP address from the same DHCP server that you do. That can be handy if you want a device that looks like anything else that's on your local network. That's why we call it a bridged configuration. And a private address is your third option usually in these. Private address means that the virtual machine can't communicate out to the rest of the network. It can only communicate within all of the other VMs that might be running on that same private network that you have configured. So it does come in handy to have that functionality. If you're running a virtual machine, it's also useful if you're having problems communicating to that virtual machine from outside another machine that might be on your local network or outside that virtual machine network. That may be why. Maybe you've got it set to private, or maybe you've got it set to shared, and instead you may want to set it to bridged. That may be the way you fix all of those problems. If you are watching these videos for continuing education unit credit. This is how you can earn 1 hour of a webinar CEU that I will send to you as a digitally signed email. You would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. You'll want to click that. Somewhere in there, you'll put your, as a subject line, it'd be nice if you put that you're requesting a continuing education unit credit, a CEU. And you may want to also put that this is the April 220-1001 study group. That helps me a lot. In there, you want to put your name. You want to put your email address because I will be emailing this back to you. And somewhere in there, you want to put our special code word of the month. Make it very obvious so it's easy for me to find. We want to look for, let's choose network address translation. Since we're dealing with a shared network address, the secret word of the month is network address translation. Send that to me. You can also put anything else you'd like in that note to me. All of these come to me directly, and then I send them out. Hopefully I can get them out today for the last couple of weeks. We get them out and available there. So make sure you have a look at those. That's your process for earning a continuing education unit credit. Sometimes it takes me a week, though, to respond to these. If you need it faster than that, please let me know, and I'll make sure I get it to you, especially if you're getting to a point where you have to renew your certification. These may be more important, so let me know if that's the case, and I'll be sure to get that to you. So let's look at our answers again. The answer indeed is the IP address of the VM is the same as the host computer because you're doing network address translation. 47% of you did get that answer correct. The VM has a unique IP address on the local network. That would actually be your bridged network address configuration. That virtual machine would have its own unique IP, as if it was a single independent physical device on your local network. The VM having a private network address, well, that would be the private address setting. That would not be able to communicate anywhere outside of the virtual network. And at no point would it ever be D. Your virtual machine would never have the same IP address as the default gateway. That's a no-no. You would never have any device that would have the same IP address as your default gateway. Then nothing would be able to route properly on your network. You would have a mess on your hands. And that's why in this case, the answer is indeed A. The IP address of the VM is the same as the host computer. Well done. Now I think we've got a few minutes left. So let's do another question. We're going to sneak another one in here, a little bit of overtime today. So we're going to do a little bit more than an hour, but that's okay, right? We can go through this. Here's your next question we'll do. The question asks, a laptop's VGA connection to an LCD projector is showing the proper output, but the entire image is displayed with a green tint. Which of these would be the most likely resolution to this issue? This is a challenge, isn't it? You've got a laptop VGA connection to an LCD projector showing the proper output, but the entire image is displayed with a green tint. Which of these would be the most likely resolution to this issue? Would it be A, reboot the laptop, B, lower the resolution on the laptop, C, display a white screen for an extended period, D is reset the LCD projector, and E is to replace the VGA cable? So you've got a number of options to choose from here to hopefully solve this issue. Let's go through them one more time. Would you reboot the laptop? Would you lower the resolution on the laptop? Would you display a white screen for an extended period? Would you reset the LCD projector, or would you replace the VGA cable? Which of these would be the most likely resolution to this issue? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer this question. I'm going to watch your answers coming in. A number of you have already answered this one. You might have even run into this problem before. You might have even seen this before. I certainly talk about this problem in my videos. So if you've watched my troubleshooting videos on video display adapters, you absolutely know what direction to go to solve this particular problem. So this is one I've run into myself personally. So I know that this particular issue can occur. So, and I managed to fix it. It's even better. So hopefully you're able to work through those image quality issues as well when you're doing troubleshooting with video. This particular problem was one we were able to resolve relatively quickly. In fact, I'll tell you more about this. So I don't want to give too much away as we're going through this, but a number of you have answered. So I think we can flip over to the answers and see how we did. Wow, we got a vast majority of you, 67% of you said to E, replace the VGA cable. 19% of you, 18%, have a completely reasonable answer, reset the LCD projector. 9% of you said lower the resolution on the laptop, and then 4% each said reboot the laptop or display a white screen for an extended period. So those are your options to be able to make this happen, to be able to fix this problem. And of course, the wording of this question is very important. Which of these would be the most likely resolution to this issue? So this is one where we have to look at the symptom to really determine what the problem is. And the symptom is that we got the right output. We're able to see the screen. We've got a Windows desktop or whatever it happens to be. It's showing the proper output. It's showing what we would expect to see. It's just that everything has a green tint to it. It's if somebody turned the green way up, and we've got a problem with this. Well, those quality problems can happen all the time when you're dealing with these types of issues. It may be something relating to color patterns or flickering. And certainly if a color is missing, especially with an analog video connection like VGA, we're really depending on those pins to be able to provide the right analog signal. And if any of those pins are bent, if any of those pins are missing, if any of those pins are crunched up against the side of the connector, you're going to see some problems with tints, with colors, with flickering. There's all kinds of distortion that you can see relating to that, especially with VGA, because on the VGA connector is where all of those pins are. In my particular situation, I was a field technician and I was called out. Somebody opened a ticket, said they just received a monitor. They plugged it in. It's all green. Please replace the monitor. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think it's the monitor, but I've got to grab, and this was in the days of CRT monitors, okay? So picking up and delivering a new monitor is one where I have a cart, thankfully, but it's a heavy box, relatively speaking, relative to an LCD. At the time, there were no LCD monitors. So we had these big monitors. So I, just in case we had to swap it out, I grabbed the monitor and drug it along with me, drove across town, got it out of my car, put it on the cart, drug it in, went to the front desk, got a pass, went down to the user's desk. Indeed, it had a green tint. I unplugged the VGA connection and looked at it, and in the back, one of the pins was scrunched into another pin. I'm not even sure how they managed to push it onto the connector and see anything, but they did. But I was able to get a small screwdriver, straighten out the pin, plug it back in. Beautiful color screen again. So that's one where you have a very easy fix to something like this. And simply in my case, it was replacing the pin that was in there. But the problem could certainly be that one of the cables is shorted inside of it as well. I didn't give you the option to bend the pin back into shape. You had to choose the most likely resolution given the options available. And given the options available, this is where you really can focus in on what you should know about replacing or fixing these types of signal issues with VGA. Rebooting the laptop would not have fixed anything because the problem is with the cable or the pins. Lowering the resolution on the laptop would not have fixed anything because your problem is that physical cable issue. Displaying a white screen for an extended period would just display a green tinted white screen for an extended period. So that would not help you either. Resetting the LCD projector, well, your problem here has nothing to do with the LCD projector. It has to do with the signal going into the projector. And if it is a problem with the LCD projector, I would imagine we would have seen this issue before. Now, in this particular case, replacing the VGA cable is the only possible answer left. And indeed, replacing the cable is the only option here that would be the most likely resolution to the issue. This is very common to see with, as I mentioned, analog video. People in the chat room are asking, what about HDMI? What about DisplayPort? In those particular cases, you'll notice the pins that are in those connectors are much smaller, and you can certainly bend those connectors and get them all out of shape. I think on my Instagram, I showed you one that I messed up in the studio, that my VGA connector was really in bad shape, and I had to replace the whole cable. But the problem with a green tint is related to an analog video signal. If you're having problems with the pins on a DisplayPort or an HDMI, you would probably more likely get dropout or no signal at all. So that's why you have that challenge with this, is finding the right answer for this particular symptom. And the symptom of an odd color is certainly indicative of an analog video signal. So if you did this and you answered E, replace the VGA cable, 66% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done with that. Well, our overtime has certainly gone into overtime now. We're a little bit late getting into the after show, but don't worry, we'll get there in a moment. All of the questions that I got today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. All of my videos follow every single objective that's in the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded these objectives, you are doing yourself a disservice. That should be the first thing you do, is grab these objectives. So if you don't have them already, go get them. And if you do have them already, read through them. Unfortunately, I've had people come to my chat room on my website, which is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's the chat room on ProfessorMesser.com. They've stopped in and said, I failed my exam today. They asked me questions about things I was not expecting. And so my natural response is, well, did you read through the exam objectives to know what they would be asking you? And they said, what exam objectives? I don't know what you're talking about. So they had never seen the list, the comprehensive list that CompTIA makes available that tells you every possible thing they could ask on the exam. They stay very close to these exam objectives. Nobody else does this. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. So take advantage of these exam objectives. You'll find a link that goes directly there at professormesser.com/objectives, or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to the page. It's the #1 link. You'll be able to find it very, very easily. Well, we do these study groups once a month. I do a 1001 and a 1002 now. So come back in a couple of days. I've got the 1002 study group ready to go on April the 4th. All the content's here. Maybe we can do it now. No, we're going to do it on the 4th. Everybody's expecting that on April the 4th. Come back then. We'll do it then. I've also got Network Plus study groups and Security Plus study groups later in the month as well. And we do another round of A Plus next month on May 7th and May 9th. If this is not anywhere near May 7th and May 9th, you're watching a replay and you want to know when is the next live event, you can always go to the calendar, click the calendar link at the top of the site, or go to professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for being here and answering these questions and going through all of these things. I appreciate you. We do a A+ pop quiz of the day every weekday on my Twitter. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter. You can find all of those. Of course, all of my 220-1001 videos now available. I shot some 220-1002 videos yesterday. I'm going to try to edit some of those today. So hopefully by the end of the week, you'll start to see 220-1002 videos show up. To be able to know when those arrive, go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so that you can get the notifications when I upload those. And I usually upload them in chunks. Don't forget about my course notes. Go to professormesser.link/1000 notes. And of course, as I mentioned, check the calendar. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. We'll be able to go through and know about you'll be able to either ask questions from the chat room. You'll be able to call in with the phone lines that I will somehow get open and up and running with all of these other things. And we'll be able to go through and learn a little more about each other. Thanks for being here for the first part of this study group, though. We could not do this without your support and your participation, and we appreciate you being here and in the chat room as well. Thanks for joining me this time. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, let's see if I can get those phone lines up and running. It's time for the after show. The after show means that I'm just kind of hanging out for an hour. It's very informal. You can ask questions in the chat room at professormesser.com/live. You can ask questions by calling in. So I'm going to open up the phone lines in a moment. And as I mentioned earlier, I neglected to create a lower third for my phone, my call-in line number. So I will give you that number. It's actually listed on the page at professormesser.com/live. You'll see the phone number there. And in a moment, I will give you that phone number as well. I first, though, need to call in myself, and I need to bring up my Skype because I call into my own show. How does that work? I don't know, but there it is. Let's call in and see if I can make this work. Is it going to make noises? Let's see if I can. Oh, I tried to call in. There we go. Yeah, it's making noises. There we go.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I can press the buttons I need on my side to make this work. And it says,
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, I will do that by entering in my 6-digit PIN number, and I will type that, and you will say,
welcome.
Welcome. See, it all works. Okay, so that if you want to call in to this show, you can call in as well. All of those calls, you're able to get there from the website. Go to professormesser.com/live. You'll see the phone number there, or you can call into the 800 number. It's a toll-free number, more than an 800 number, but the call-in number. Need to get to the right view of this. One moment. Get this right here. In fact, I could probably put it up on the screen with our presentation that we had earlier so you can actually see it on the screen. We've got all of this available for you. There we go. Our studio line, for those of you wanting to call in, is right here. All right. There it is. So its studio line is 855-785-RJ45. So if you're anywhere in the continental United States, you can call in with 855-785-RJ45. If you are on anywhere else in the world and you want to call in, you can also call in on that same number using Skype, because with Skype, there are no Skype minutes required for a toll-free number. I pay for the call. So you can call in, just put a +1 at the beginning, just as I've done here on the studio line, +1 855-785-RJ45 will get you to that phone number. It's one of the best ways to do that. That will get you to the phone lines, and then I can answer questions that you may be asking in the phone lines. You can also ask questions in the chat room that is available at professormesser.com/live. So we got details there. In fact, some questions are coming in about BIOS and UEFI and CMOS, and why there is a confusion there. We'll absolutely talk about those as well. In the meantime, though, I need to get up on my screen the things that will allow me to answer the phone lines, like the one that's coming in from the 540 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for being here. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. My name is Roberto. I'm calling from Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Oh, welcome.
How are you doing?
Thanks, Roberto, for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, first of all, I want to give you thanks for all the material you have prepared. I am very grateful for you and all your material. I'm passed the CompTIA A+ exam last week, and most of that thanks to your content.
Oh, it's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm now preparing, I'm focusing on getting the Security Plus done before July, which I'm going to go for vacation, and I just want to go ready for it.
Nice.
One of the questions that I want to have for you is, do you think it's necessarily getting the Network Plus before going for the Security Plus? In my case, I'm studying in the college right now. I'm taking class for networking and Security Plus at the same time. So I'm trying to think, or I'm thinking that I would like to skip the network part of the exam and just go for the security, because I'm already getting that content.
I agree with your philosophy. I think that's the best way to go. A lot of people like to take the A+ first, then take the Network Plus, then take the Security Plus, and they will find there is some overlap between the Network Plus and Security Plus. There's certainly concepts that are similar between them, but the Security Plus doesn't have really much that is overlapping with the Network Plus. If you had a Venn diagram, they really wouldn't overlap. Those two circles would not overlap very much. For example, with Network Plus, there's a lot of information about cables and fiber, and you have to know subnetting. There's all this detail about networking. Security Plus has none of that. The Network Plus has command line things you have to know about for pinging and trace routing and all of those other. Security Plus has no command lines in it. And in fact, many people come to my site and the first industry certification they're getting is Security Plus, and primarily because they want to go work for the Department of Defense that requires Security Plus as a minimum certification for working there. So they start with the Security Plus. And in fact, with those 3 exams, the first one I ever took was my Security Plus. Then I took my Network Plus. Then I took my A+. I did it exactly in reverse to what most people would think is the right path. So I think jumping to Security Plus, especially if that's something you're focusing in on, that's important for your plans and your goals, absolutely skip over Network Plus, take Security Plus now. Later on, if you get into a position where you're doing more networking or you want to get into a position with more networking, you can always go back and go through some of the Network Plus or any of those networking certifications. You won't be missing anything. You won't be losing anything. You're not at a disadvantage for doing that. You'll do just fine on the Security Plus.
All right. I thought that I didn't have plans to take the A+ either, but a professor at my college, he was kind enough to provide me with some vouchers that was about to expire in 2 weeks. So I rushed it in 2 weeks and actually got the test and passed the exam.
Wow.
It was really good. One question that I have for you is, what will you recommend? I'm trying to set up a home lab here because I know it's really good to have that for security and be testing.
Right.
I already have a Windows Server 2012 that I downloaded for free. What other tools would you recommend me for using for that for this lab that I'm having here at home, where I'm testing so many things from the security exam?
One of the big components that every organization kind of revolves around with security is their firewall. So understanding more than I'm not talking about like the Soho firewall from Linksys that we have handling our internet. I mean something that is really designed for enterprise firewalling, or at least conceptually has all of the concepts you would need for an enterprise firewall. And so I highly recommend that you get either install fresh or get a virtual machine running that has something like pfSense running. And pfSense is an open source firewall, but it's an extremely capable and effective open source firewall. And it has the same functionality and capabilities that you would find in an enterprise firewall that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm speaking as someone as a former systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. I'm very familiar with the firewall field. So having pfSense running gives you an idea of how to set up the firewall, how to configure the firewall interfaces, how to set up firewall rules, how to understand the log files that are created, how to maybe set up network address translation in that particular firewall. And if you find the right configuration, some VMware or virtual machine configurations of pfSense also include Snort, which is an intrusion prevention product. So now you can not only learn the firewall side of things, but you can also look through the intrusion prevention side of things. Those are two of the biggest security components you're going to run into in anybody's enterprise. So that would be a very good choice for setting up a home lab and at least getting started. And then if you like that and you want to do more, maybe you load it on a dedicated hardware. Maybe you start using it as your own firewall. I think what you're going to find, though, as you look through the logs, you'll start to see some interesting things happening with the traffic that's going in and out of this firewall. And at that point, you've got some good stories to use in an interview. If somebody's talking to you about your home lab, they're talking to you about security, and you could say, you'll never believe what I saw when I set up pfSense on my own home network. Here's what I found. And that's a great story to have when you're sitting in front of somebody and you're trying to get that job.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. I'm going to be for sure seeing your material and getting ready for that exam before July. Well, thank you.
Best of luck, Roberto. That's a good way, by the way, to set up any virtual machine. I mentioned we were talking about VMs earlier for the 1000 series. For those of you that aren't familiar with modern.ie, modern.ie, that is Microsoft's developer website. And the developer website has on it, I can get to that developer website myself, there it is, has on it links in the tools pull-down menu that has virtual machines where you can download for lab purposes a virtual machine running Windows 7, Windows 8.1, or Windows 10. And for those of you studying for your 1001 exam, 1002 specifically, you have to have Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 to be able to do that. Microsoft makes it available to you for free. So that's another thing you can do from a virtual machine perspective. Before we go back to the calls, very quickly, there was that that question from the chat room earlier. And that question asked about a couple of things. It asked about the exact difference between the CMOS and the BIOS/UEFI. And you see them referred to sort of interchangeably. Yes. And it causes trouble. Yes, it does. And it's probably something we do to ourselves in the industry. You'll sometimes see things like enter the CMOS setup. Yep. And then sometimes enter the BIOS setup, as if they are both referring to the same thing. Yeah, they are both referring to the same thing. If you wanted to get down to the brass tacks, to the very specific pieces of this, and I'm very careful to delineate these things in my introductory videos of my BIOS videos, not the introductory, but the BIOS videos that are in my 1001 series, is that you have the software that starts up your computer is the BIOS. And there is the legacy BIOS, and on our newer computers is the UEFI BIOS, but it's still a BIOS. It's a basic input-output system. So when somebody says, I need to change the configuration of those startup parameters, you're changing the BIOS parameters. Sometimes we also refer to this as CMOS because back in the day, there was actual CMOS chips that were used to store these configuration parameters. And we had battery backup on our motherboard that constantly provided power to that CMOS chip so that it wouldn't lose our configurations. Well, these days we don't use CMOS anymore. There's flash memory that we use for this. It doesn't have to constantly be refreshed. We don't need the battery on our motherboard to make sure that our configuration disappears. It's all just stored into flash memory that's on our motherboard. So we still refer to the CMOS, though, as, oh, it's saving the CMOS configuration. But really, there's no CMOS. We just sort of call it that because we called it that for so long. It's very similar to the early questions I asked that had the interfaces, and we had a DB25 we used for so long as a serial port, and then we shrunk it down to a 9-pin, and we started calling it a DB9. But technically, it's not a DB9, it's DE9. But once you start calling it that, we can't change it now. It's stuck in our heads. So calling it a CMOS setup is just one of those idiosyncrasies of the industry where we know it's the BIOS setup, but we've just called it the CMOS setup for so long that it's effectively become that name. But you, as a technician who is understanding BIOS and learning this for A+, you should know the differences, and you should absolutely understand those differences. So make sure that you go through all of this and understand what those differences might be, because it may be delineated differently on your exam, and you will be expected to really understand that there are differences, and you should not be calling them the same thing. The developer site from Microsoft, again, is modern.ie. I'm going to put it into the chat room. Modern.ie. There you go. That'll get you there. Back to the phone calls real quick. Let's go to the 318 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Tyler. I'm calling from Northeast Louisiana.
Welcome.
I'm very thankful for everything you've done. I'm not calling about an A+ thing. I'm taking my Network Plus on Thursday.
That's fine.
And I don't know. I guess I'm calling for tips. I've looked through every lick of material you have. I've been prepping for writing out my cheat sheet with my intervals of 2. Your 7-second subnetting technique is phenomenal. I was so worried about subnetting up until that. That's been fantastic. Yeah, that is quite the method to use, and especially considering, does anybody actually manually subnet anymore? I mean, there are calculators for that now, right?
Well, it's one of those things. I just had this conversation with my son, who is in a class right now going through A+ materials. He just finished a networking course, and he said, "What is the deal with subnetting, Dad? This is ridiculous." And I said, "Oh, you are now an IT professional, because it is ridiculous. None of us get subnetting right." It is one of these. First, none of us calculated at the binary level. No, we all have some kind of shortcut that we use to be able to figure it out, or we simply go online and we type it in and have the online calculator give us the details. And I'm talking as someone who has worked with IT professionals at the highest levels in some of the biggest companies, names you would absolutely know, companies that are big brands out there. We get it wrong all the time because it's so easy. It's a lot of math. It's a lot of numbers we have to deal with. And I will be given an IP address with a subnet mask, and they'll give me a default gateway, except the default gateway isn't in the same subnet as the IP address and subnet mask they just gave me. Now, this often happens when it's a hard one, when it's not a 255.0.0.0 or 255.255.0.0. It doesn't have that even 8-bit difference with the subnet. It's usually a .192 or a .254 or a one of those really unusual terms. And if you haven't been working with that subnet, you have to now stop for a second, figure out the differences. How many hosts in that subnet does this fall? You have to really stop and calculate it or figure it out. Some people like to use the pie chart version. Some people use the magic number. Some people grab a calculator, online calculator for IP subnet calculator, and they do it that way. All of those are completely relevant ways you should do it. You should, of course, know how to do it manually so that when you're looking at it, and it doesn't look right or something's not working, you at least can validate it in your mind that it's there. I came up with the 7-second subnetting because I'm just an idiot when I sit down for the exams and I can't remember how to do anything. And I don't trust myself with the math that I got it right. And when you're sitting down for Network Plus, you might not even get a subnetting question. It's such a small part of the exam. You might get 1, you might get 2, you might get 0. But I've taken Cisco exams and Palo Alto Network exams and these higher level certification exams in the networking industry, and you have tons of subnetting you have to do, and you have to do it really, really quickly, and that's why I came up with that. People have informed me, of course, this is a really inefficient way of I have to write all these charts out. I said, yeah, I know, but I can't do the calculation. I can't handle it. So yes, I write this out so that I can quickly do the calculation, and I know I'm right every time because there's technically no calculation involved. So that's why when you ask and you have this question about subnetting, what is the deal? Do people really do this? We usually will use a calculator just to validate ourselves, or we work with a subnet so often. I used to work on a network that was a 255.255.255.192 subnet. So I know from the top of my head, I can calculate anything very quickly. I know where the ranges are. It's just something I become accustomed to over time. Just like when you hop in your car and you don't even think about turning the key and putting it in drive and backing up and going wherever you're going and turning and making a left and making a right. You don't think about the mechanics behind it anymore. It's just something you do every day. The same thing will happen with subnetting. You'll get so bored of having to do it. It will be so easy for you. But when I was working on the 192 network and somebody showed up and said, well, this is a .254, you could hear the record scratch. Like, hold on, everybody wait. I have to calculate the 254 subnet now because now I can't do this across this WAN. So that's completely normal, and nobody does the manual calculations. We all have some trick or hook that we use to get through it.
Got you. All right, well, any tips for me to go in? And
yes.
I know you had mentioned before, as soon as you walk into the exam, everything seems to blank out. What would be I've gone through all the objectives. I've watched your videos on a weekly basis for months now, going through each objective, splitting apart each day as an objective. So what's the main?
Look, okay, so your last sanity check, if someone can tolerate you doing this or you can tolerate doing this to a mirror or to yourself, is to go through that exam objective and explain that objective to whoever may be there or an invisible person who's there with you. Explain to them as if you're trying to explain to anyone else what this objective really means. And if you can go through the entire set of exam objectives, which is relatively comprehensive, and tell people what you know about it, and you're very comfortable with those pieces, and you aren't missing any, you're not having to circle anything and circle back, then you're ready for the exam. That's a pretty good sanity check.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, again, what you do is amazing. I know you hear it all the time. I check into most of your study groups just to see what knowledge you're providing. But, hey, man, I really appreciate it. I know a lot of other people do. I wish you an awesome day once again.
I appreciate it too, Tyler. Thanks so much.
Take care.
That's boy, you should see my son. Like, what is the deal with the subnetting, Dad? You guys are crazy that you have to deal with this. He's thinking maybe networking isn't for me. I said, hold on, trust me, that's as bad as it gets as far as the math is concerned, and it is crazy. And we all have to figure out. I love the people in the chat room. You just get rid of the bits and then you take what's left. Thanks very much, Chris. That's very helpful to people like me that cannot handle the subnetting process I can handle it when I'm not in an exam. I can calculate it out pretty well by looking at these when I'm not in an exam. It's when I'm in an exam that's the problem, because you have to do it so fast, and then you have to know it's right. And that's the part that's really important to me. I don't want to make a dumb mistake with subnetting and then miss some points because I made a dumb mistake because of the time. When I can look at my chart, go, kunk, 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 okay, that's the answer, and then keep it moving, and I know I got the right answer. That's why I created that. So for people send me emails all the time like, this is stupid. Yes, that is, but so am I, and that's why I created it, because I'm so difficult for me to do subnetting in the exam. Let's go back to the questions for this and having it there. It is stupid. You're absolutely right. It's difficult. When we both agree that it's stupid, we know we've finally hit on something, haven't we? So some folks are trying to figure out in the chat room, which one of these exams do you take? Do you take the 900 series A+ exam? Do you take the 1000 series A+ exam? Right now, as we sit here on April the 2nd, 2019, it's a numbers game. It's a time game. You have until July 31st to pass the 901 and the 902 to be A+ certified. If you pass one of those and you don't pass the other, and it has now gone past July 31st, you have to start over. So that's your big problem. For me, that's the big problem. I've invested money and time into this, but mostly money, and I've passed an exam, and I wasn't able to get the second exam done before the exam series retired, because you can't take a 901 and the 1002. You can't take the 902 and the 1001. You can't mix and match. You have to take both of them from the same exam series. So that means that you have to make a decision right now here in April, which one do I take? Part of the problem right now, very limited number of books available for the 1000 series exam, but that changes this month. According to Amazon and release dates and what I'm starting to see trickle out, we're starting to see some activity with books. So we should see a number of books available in the month of April. So if that's the case, I think that's exactly what we should focus on, is getting this idea of 1000 series should start to now be our norm in our head. Like the 900 series, if you've been studying for a while, you got one exam left, and you got to get that one exam done before the end of July, I'm with you. Absolutely do the 900 series. But for everyone else, we should probably start thinking about moving over. And in fact, if you've been studying for the 900 series, from a time perspective, I know it takes me months to get through one of these exams. From a time perspective, you may not have the time to pass the 900 series right now. You might be better off switching to the 1000 series materials and then moving forward with the 1000, because now you have years before you have to pass both of those. So that may be a good idea to think about what you're doing. Now, for some of you who have been studying so long for the 900 series, you may be thinking, I don't want to change now. I've invested all this time in the 900 series. Well, the good part is that there's only 20% new topics on the 1000 series. So if you were to move from the 900 and you were to watch my 1000 series videos, in fact, I've got emails about this for people that have done that. They've watched my 900 series videos, and now they've gone through and watched my 1000 series videos, and they said, this is all very similar to the 900 series. Yes, 80% of it is going to be identical to the 900 series, because the serial port is still a serial port. The VGA port is still a VGA port. The HDMI interface is still an HDMI interface. That has not changed since the 900 series. But you can see that there are newer USB connections. There are changes to some of the cloud-based topics. So there's 20% new things you would have to learn, but that's only 20%. So if you're thinking, you're on the edge right now thinking, should I move to the 1000 series? If you're thinking that, you probably should. You probably should. The only thing right now is if you're really ready to take one last exam for the 900 series, that's the one I'd probably stick with. The chat room, any tips on getting a discount on the CompTIA exam? There's not a lot of discounts available out there. It is really quite a challenge to find discounts for this exam. But if you are a student, there are student discounts available. Go to the CompTIA Academic Marketplace. Those are the three terms you need to put into the Google. CompTIA Academic Marketplace. If you are a student, an active student, some people thought that if you just had an EDU address. No, they want you to be a student to get the discount. If you are in classes right now, and you can prove that you're in classes because they do ask for proof, you can earn almost 50% discount on these exams. So being a student in this case is a good thing. Now, if you're not a student, you're not eligible for that discount. A lot of people are not happy about that, but that's one of the benefits you get for being a student and having no money and having to eat poorly and try to scrounge enough money to take a certification exam. They try to make it a little easier for you for those. And a good point for mentioning in the chat room is some schools are CompTIA partners. So find out if your school is, and you also get discounts on the exams. You may even be able to pay or take the exam on campus, which is nice. The local community college here has a very nice testing center, and you can take your CompTIA exams there, which is a nice way to do it. So Matteo in the chat room is asking about smart TVs. Some of these smart TVs have cameras. Some of these smart TVs have microphones. My cable company Cable Box has a microphone. Is there a way to intercept/view the camera? And in some cases, yes, there is. Some enterprising security professionals, security researchers have found that in some of these cases, the mic is always on, and it is always, in some cases, able to be listened to or intercepted, which has been a significant security concern for many. And if you think about it, it has to be listening all the time. If you use a prompt to talk to the television, turn to channel 6, the television has to be listening for you to say that, usually listening for a code word, which I'm not going to say because whatever code word I use right now is going to cause your machine to change to channel 6. I don't want that to happen. So we would tell our phone to listen in on what I'm about to tell you. We would tell our device that's in our house, listen into what we're about to tell you. Is there a way to intercept via the camera? There might be. There have been many companies that have been put in a position having to roll out updates to their code because security researchers have found ways to intercept this. So that's a significant concern when we started bringing these smart devices into our homes, that they have microphones, they have cameras on these devices in many cases. There are cameras on our laptops. There are cameras in front of me, not just the cameras I put in so you can see the stream. There's a camera on this monitor. There's a camera on this monitor. There's a camera on this laptop. There is a camera on this mobile device. So in front of me, I have 4 cameras that are not supposed to be watching me right now, but I can't confirm to 100% that they aren't. I know it's kind of a creepy way to think about it. It's very paranoid to think that way. We can think maybe that they are not, but that's one of those where you're never 100%. And if you talk to security professionals with the government, they will tell you, put black tape over all of your cameras. And I don't know whether they're telling you that because they are paranoid, because when you work for security for the federal government, you're pretty paranoid. I don't know if anybody's told you this. I think we need to have a talk. You're pretty paranoid. They may just be saying this because someone could, not that someone is, but we'll never know. So there's your creepy concept of the month. Happy to do that for you, to have that there. Is there a website or magazines I recommend for keeping up with new technology for OS vulnerabilities? It's tough. There are a number of trade magazines and websites that you can go to watch for these things. There's not one central great spot because a operating system or application vulnerability for you may not apply to someone else. So we tend to look at the large indexes of vulnerabilities, except that becomes a mass of data that you just will not, eventually you just won't look through it. So the big ones, of course, will be promoted in all of the big security trade magazines, or these days they're not magazines, they're websites, security websites. Someone mentioned Security Week's a good one. Podcasts are another great resource, although that can be days or weeks behind of some of these vulnerabilities, which are too late. So it's really just finding the right resource online that works for you and seeing what the security researchers are finding, because you never know what can be coming down the line. I always have to keep up with things about website management, the website modules that I'm using, the software I'm using on my website. I have to make sure those are secure. I have to make sure my backend process is secure, that my certificates are up to date, that the web server itself and the operating system running my web services is secure. So there's all these different aspects of security you have to keep track of, not just any one single place, like not just Linux, but also the software running on Linux, not just the software running on Linux, but the upstream hardware and software that I'm using for load balancing and for firewalling and for databases, and it goes on and on and on and on. So there's always concerns associated with that you have to think about as you're getting into those things. Let's go back to the calls. I should probably give out the phone number more often for those of you wanting to call in. It's 855-785-7545. For those of you wanting to call in, that's a toll-free number and free on Skype with a +1 855-785-RJ45. We'll get you there as well. Let's go to the calls to the 920. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, caller. I see you're there. I have you. There he is. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, caller. What can we do for you? It seemed like a good idea at the time, didn't it? There he goes. That's one of those. If you are calling in from Skype and you're wondering, is this going to work? Call that Skype testing service. Skype testing service is right there on your main menu. And you can call in and try it. You can talk to Skype. Skype will repeat back to you what has been said, so you can make sure that not only they can hear it, but you can hear it as well. It's a good way to be sure if you're calling in that way. Some people say Security Now. It's a great podcast on the Twit network, twit.tv. I agree. That is a good podcast. There's a number of good podcasts for security out there. It's tough to find the right mix for security. And probably because the security market is so broad. A number of people will talk about security, but they're really talking about taking malware and looking at the way malware operates. All right, that's absolutely part of security, but it's not part of IT security. It's more of application or computer science security. You've got people concerned about operating system vulnerabilities. Desktop security, that type of thing is certainly important, but maybe your focus is on the network and firewalling and VPNs and those pieces. So it's so broad that you're never going to find one resource that encapsulates everything that's important for you. You're going to have to go to many different resources to be able to do that. So that's one of those you have to think about as you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with this? How's this going to work? And all of those things. So make sure you think about that as well as you step through finding the right resource. Don't get burnt out on getting too many resources, because that's very easy to do in security and you can overdo it. I think Security Now is probably the good podcast to use as a barometer. I think they find the right mix of what's important for the consumer, what's important for the professional, what's important for people doing operating systems and that type of thing. So especially things large malware that's going on, and for these very popular breaches that occur and you need to know about it, that's a good place to go too. They cover a lot of those good things and at least give you some ideas of where to go from there. I think you can branch off pretty well once you deal with Security Now and going through those pieces. Whenever I start trying to figure out from a security perspective where to go, these things always tend to change on me as well. These resources tend to come and go. So try to find a good mix of them, and I think you'll be okay. Questions in the chat room. Let me scroll up a bit to go here. Some folks were asking about the versions of the videos that I'm working on. So let me give you an explanation of where we are with the A+ videos. So for those of you that have been wanting to get the 22001 A+ certification, all of my 1001 videos are done. They're posted, they're indexed, they're online, they're ready for you to watch. The only thing that has to be done with those videos is there is a transcription process that occurs and closed captions that are added to those. Some of you may not even realize this, is that every single one of my training videos is closed captioned by a human being. So many of you know that YouTube has an automatic captioning process, but with some of the terms that we use, CMOS, BIOS, it doesn't get a lot of these weird terms right when I'm talking about HDMI and DisplayPort and other things. So I have a third party that watches every video and does the transcript and closed captioning. So if you're someone who is hard of hearing, if you're someone who is English is not your first language, you will be able to turn on the closed captioning for all of my videos and get a pretty accurate breakdown of the actual text of what I'm saying. So that's a good one to go with. There's also a transcript that's created from this, obviously, since I have all of this now typed out. And on my website, after every video, the video's at the top of the page, and underneath it is the entire transcript of the video. So you're able to search for things easier. You're able to follow along to find things easier. There's a lot of things you can do there that will help. So that's some options that are good places to go to find the right content. That's for the 1001. So all those videos are done. Yesterday, I started shooting for the 1002 course. I've already got some videos that are sitting here on my SSD ready to be edited. There's certainly things you can do there. There's to wait for those. There's a lot of editing and things I have to do, but I'm planning to get some of those out this week. I think there will be at least an opportunity for me to edit some of them and get them online. I think a lot of people are looking to see. I even have people say, "Are you going to do 1002 videos?" Oh, yes. We will be getting through the 1002 videos. Don't worry. And I think if I get a couple of them out, people will start to see, oh, okay, there's more coming. There's a lot more coming because there's probably about 60 plus videos for the 1002 course that have to be shot and edited and closed captioned and retranscribed and all of that. So that's something that will be happening here shortly, and you'll start to see them come out. Another question in the chat room, since we're talking about security, can someone hijack your computer for crypto mining? Oh, sure. I mean, there's plenty of malware out there that does crypto mining. There's plenty of websites you can go to where there is a JavaScript that will run that does crypto mining. Absolutely. There's probably a little less of it than there used to be because the value of cryptography isn't where it was 2 years ago. The price of these have come down. So the value at doing the mining has therefore come down. So that was one there that you'll find is certainly still popular though. And there's plenty of malware out there that does that. And of course you can do it yourself. It doesn't have to be malware. You can use your own computer for crypto mining. Although with most cryptography that's required, your computer is probably not well suited. These days you need specialized hardware and a lot of it to provide any value for that crypto mining. Question from John in the chat room. Are there any resources to practice for the performance-based questions for the 902 exam? Well, I'll tell you first, the performance-based questions are not a different type of content than the rest of the 902 exam objectives. It's just a different way of asking the questions. So if you know from the 902 about your operating systems, you know about security, you know about all of the content that's in the exam objectives, it may be asked, you may be asked to show that information in some form other than multiple choice. That's all a performance-based question is. So I don't necessarily think you should be focusing on practicing for the performance-based questions. I think you should be focusing on the exam objectives, and then it won't matter how they ask the question. It's kind of where I'm coming from with that. That's your real focus with this. However, if you go back to my 902 A+ or my 901, 902 A+ study groups, I think every other month I swapped out between a 901 and a 902 a performance-based question. The first question of every study group is a performance-based question. So you can go back to those, and I have questions like I listed out all of these combinations of upgrading Windows. Windows 7 to Windows 10, Windows Vista to Windows 7, or Windows Vista Home to Windows 7 Professional, Windows Vista Ultimate to Windows 7 Ultimate. Do you upgrade or do you have to do a clean install? Some of those you can upgrade, Some of them you have to do a clean install. So that was a good example of 5 or 6 of those. You had to choose which one. It's kind of a drag and drop, or a pick one or the other. A pick one, a pick 2 of those to have those done. So there's some options there you can go through. I try to make these performance-based questions as close to the flavor of the exam as possible. We're doing this online on a live stream with what effectively is a fill in the blank for answering the question. So it won't represent exactly the style of what you'll be clicking on the screen, but I like to think that the knowledge that you're having to provide is very similar to the knowledge that you would have to provide on the exam. So that's my perspective, and what my objective is with creating that content is to give you enough that if you were presented that in a different way, you would have no problem answering the questions. So don't worry about the style, worry about the substance, and you'll be just fine with those. And that is the real key. Let's see if I got another thing. Somebody else was mentioning, just quickly, since we do have some time left before the hour is up, someone was talking earlier about the video and how at least somebody's mentioned, wait, this camera is different. And you're right, this camera is different. I don't know, you can't really even see it in the view. But if you have been here for previous videos, for previous courses, a little bit of this content in this room is a little different. The audio mixer is the same, and the audio chain that I'm using is currently the same, although that may be changing shortly. The video switcher now in front of me, a little bit smaller. It's a completely different video switcher. In fact, this system that's on my desk is the entire switcher. You can't see it, but there are all the SDI video cables are coming into the back of this device. I used to do this on a TriCaster. This is a Blackmagic Television Studio 4K. This is on now. Everything is 4K in the studio, which is remarkable that we're able to do this at, it's not really consumer level, it's really professional level, but it's not easy yet to do 4K without broadcast cameras. It's still some challenges there, but you are able to do it. So this is a new video switcher that supports 4K, and I am running 4K in the studio for everything except this view. This view is actually still running at 1080p. I've got to upgrade that camera. There's things you have to plug in and change, and I haven't done that yet. But the camera in front of me is a new Lumix GH5S from Panasonic. It is an exceptional 4K camera for video. It's probably the best prosumer professional. I wouldn't say it's a professional camera. It's an SLR. You can kind of see it in this picture. It's can't see it real well because this is in the way. We'll slide this out of the way. But that's an SLR, digital SLR. So I can take it off of that and go take photographs, go take video. If I ever leave this room, if I ever travel somewhere, I can do that. So that's 4K camera, 4K behind me. The screen displays that you saw today are being provided to the switcher at 4K, including the laptop and the desktop that's in front of me are all transmitting at 4K. So now all of the training videos we're going to do going forward will all be 4K videos. I will edit at 4K here. I'll probably post onto YouTube at 4K. So you'll start to see 4K from us. I don't know that there's a ton of value there. I think the 1080p videos look fine, but a lot of people like me have 4K in their house with their televisions. They watch a lot of YouTube on their televisions now. So having it at that crisp, clear 4K video does make a difference when you're trying to grab this information and get it into your brain. I want it to look and sound as good as possible. So hopefully it is a dramatic difference. I was literally using a consumer video camera from Canon to as my head video, the one you're looking at right now. And camera's probably 6 or 7 years old, but still a great 1080p camera, but it didn't have the same color depth. There was differences, the type of sensitivity of the sensor. We're talking 7-8 years ago. That's a huge difference in sensor sensitivity. And obviously it wasn't 4K ready. This camera is designed for 4K. The colors are amazing. The visuals on 4K are outstanding. I'm very pleased with the cameras and the way they're looking. So that's where that's coming from. Now, I'm not I'm not sending this to you on the stream at 4K. I have absolutely the ability to do that. I've got the bandwidth to send it 4K. I did some 4K tests this weekend. It works great and it looks fantastic. But for live streams and YouTube, the way that this works is I send YouTube a single stream of content. I send them whatever I send them. I just send them one stream. They grab that stream and they redistribute it out into different formats. They effectively re-render everything. So I send them a 1080p video. They re-render the 1080p. They re-render into 720p. They re-render into 480, and so on and so forth. So no matter how you're watching this, you can choose any quality you would like for this video, and you can watch it in that form. And for YouTube, they can do this with 1080p HD video, and the latency is like 3 seconds from the time I say it to the time you watch it. It is remarkable how fast their equipment is to do this for live streams. They are right there at the cutting edge for being able to do that. However, 4K is a significant increase in data. You're talking more than 4 times the amount of information being sent. So the delay at taking 4K, concatenating it, re-rendering it into a form that will work for you when you're receiving this on the YouTube side, the delay was about 20 to 30 seconds. So for our particular form, I'm asking questions and you're answering the questions. And being able to have a turnaround either in the chat room or for you answering questions on the Socrative front end, to have a 3-second turnaround is fantastic for what we're doing. It fits very well. We can have a conversation. I can ask questions of the chat room and I'm seeing answers in 3 to 6 seconds later. But if this was a delay, which we used to have for 1080p, this is a relatively new functionality for YouTube in the last couple of years. For 1080p, it used to be, even for 720p, it used to be that I would ask a question and there was a 20-second delay. So I would have to ask the question. If you go back years with the study groups, I would ask the question and then I would kind of fill time until the answer started trickling in. And it was difficult to have conversations with the chat room because I would ask something of the chat room and then I'd have to wait 20 to 30 seconds before ever seeing a response to what I was asking. And that was difficult. If you're having an interactive conversation like we are right now, where you're sending things in a chat room, you're calling in on a phone line, that's really difficult. It takes away from the interactivity of the event. So for the time being, I am sending 4K to my streaming server. I can show you my streaming server because I have it now on my video switcher. So here's my streaming server. Whoa, there it goes. You can sort of see that's going to happen because of the way we've got this set up. But I'm sending to my streaming server, and my streaming server is receiving it at 4K. It's re-rendering to 1080p and sending that to YouTube. So we're doing everything to YouTube at 1080p. But the videos that I post, which obviously are not live, there's something I'm uploading as I finish them. Going forward, we will be uploading them at 4K. I think I was able to do some editing yesterday and everything seemed to work fine. So we'll continue to do that. I'll continue to edit that way and we'll continue to get those going. What was the website I mentioned last month for setting up a server at home for testing purposes? I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what that would have been. So maybe you can go through and I know we talked about modern.ie, which we talked about here. If it was last month on the Security Plus study group, we talked about pfSense, we talked about Snort. Website for setting up a server at home for testing purposes. Those were the ones. Oh, Windows server, it was probably modern.ie. So that's what I was probably referring to. So you can download all of the Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 builds and run them. Windows Server, you would have to download the Windows Server evaluation, which Microsoft makes available. You can Google that one very easily and find it. There's an evaluation page for Windows Server where you can download it and then you get it for 60 days or 90 days or whatever they have set up. I think somebody just posted the link to the evaluation link there in the chat room so you can find it very, very easily. That way you can load up Windows Server. load up and work with Active Directory, put some names in there, have your machine connect to Active Directory, manage your machine through Active Directory. In fact, it can be 2 VMs. If you watch that course is no longer on my website, but if you go back into the YouTube archives and you look at my 70-680 Microsoft Windows 7 course, that course had an Active Directory component and the Windows 7 component, and that was all done on a Mac with 2 VMs. I was running Mac OS as my primary desktop. I had a VM for Windows Server and a VM for Windows 7, and I'd simply just make them full screen for the video part of this. And then I would have the laptop, I have the VM that's the Windows 7 machine connect to and be part of the Active Directory domain, and then manage that machine through Active Directory. It worked perfectly. And I could have them on their own private network. I think in that case, I made them part of a bridge network configuration. Since we just talked about this, I bridged it to my local network, and that way it was very easy for both the Windows Server and the Windows 7 device to then talk to the internet, because it simply went through the normal DHCP and internet configurations that I had internally here. So that was an easy way to do it, I think, with all of those. Well, I think that brings us up to speed, though. Now you've gotten kind of a tour of the studio. I think I will be, after finishing the A+ videos, kind of be making a tour of this so that you can really see what we're doing with all of these videos. There's some interesting things happening here with this content. Some of you want to do this type of streaming, so it'd be nice to document some of this so you can see some of the decisions we had to make to do it the way we wanted to do it, because I have a very specific idea of the way we want this to happen. But we've come to the end of the second hour of our study group. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the study group. Thanks for being here for the first hour and answering questions. Thanks for sticking around the after show and asking questions in the chat room and calling in on the phone lines. We appreciate you being here. We could not do this without you. Come back in a couple days. We'll do the 220-1002 study group. We got more A+ questions for you. I'd love to have you here to answer questions for that as well. Thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group.